So here I am with another video that was supposed to be done at CES, but that really didn't happen because Dimitri, Mike, and I wanted to spend a little bit more time processing the information regarding the new Intel NUC 9 Extreme, or in other words, what they're calling it, the Ghost Canyon. Honestly, a lot of the information is positive and there are a lot of cool things happening with the NUC 9, but it also kind of left our heads scratching up for a bit with regards to what the heck Intel was even thinking with the design, pricing, and strategy. But most importantly, who is this thing even targeted towards? So we've spent quite a while thinking about it, so let's get into it right after a quick message from our sponsor.
We've all been there, looking at our RAM thinking, what a weakling. Well, no longer. Introducing Tough RAM by Thermaltake, the toughest RAM around. With a discreet built-in logo and premium heat spreaders design, the toughest addressable LED system with super brightness, compatibility with all the usual motherboard software, even Razer Chroma, and voice control through Amazon Alexa. Available in the toughest capacities of 16GB per kit with speeds between 3000 and 4400 MHz. Consider the Tough RAM RGB, linked below.
Alright, so let's start this at the top and explain a bit about the new NUC ecosystem, starting off with a quick list of components. Every NUC, regardless of whether if it's from Intel or one of their partners, will come with a NUC compute element card, a daughter board, and a power supply, all of which is installed into a compatible chassis. Those will be combined into either bare bones or pre-built systems. With that being said, the cornerstone of all of this is the NUC compute element. This is basically a combination of motherboard with a CPU where the processor is soldered in place, so no, you can't buy them separately. The entire thing interfaces with the rest of the system via PCIe Gen 3 X16 slot and is powered by a single 8-pin EPS connector. It also has all the necessary I/O connectors on the back, including HDMI 2.0 and Thunderbolt 3. Inside, there's an integrated Wi-Fi 6 card, 2 SOTA memory slots, and a pair of M.2 NVMe connectors. But here's the first issue. The NUC usually stands for Next Unit of Computing, which showcases Intel's upcoming processors and their newest features. But this almost feels like last-gen tech because instead of using Comet Lake, Intel is using the old 9th generation Coffee Lake mobile CPUs. And I'm thinking they're doing this to reduce temperatures and lower power consumption, but it's a really odd move. Basically, there'll be compute element boards with an 8-core 16-thread unlocked i9-9980HK that can be overclocked through Intel's XTU. There's also going to be another model with the i7-9750H, like what's found on my Razer Blade 15, and an i5-9300H. These aren't slow CPUs, but they drastically underperform the more capable AMD and Intel CPUs that can be installed into an ITX system these days. The element itself can't be used alone, and that's where the Ghost Canyon or NUC 9 Extreme comes into things. Intel actually plans on selling this as a complete bare-bones system through retailers or selling it directly to companies. It comes with the Skull-branded 5-liter case, one of the compute elements pre-installed, and a 500-watt SFX power supply. This is a bare-bones system that just needs storage, an operating system, and SOTA memory to make it a fully functioning PC, and getting access to those items is pretty easy. You just need to remove some screws, pop the top open, and everything's right there. Intel says pricing still hasn't been settled, but just the other day, the compute elements were listed on Intel's site. So for just the 9300H element, we're looking at around $652, and the 9750H will go for $813. But what about that unlocked 9980HK? Well, that'll be 1,242 George Washingtons. Oh god, Intel. You and your ridiculous pricing strategy. You see, according to Intel's site, the 9980HK's recommended price is $583. So it's pretty mind-boggling to think that they'd sell the NUC element card for a little over $1,200, given that perfectly good motherboards don't cost more than $200. And what about the NUC 9 Extreme Barebones kit, complete with a chassis but without a GPU, memory, and storage? Well, check out these prices, guys. They literally are as much as an entire gaming PC, GPU, and all of that stuff. And also, remember, retailers usually price these a lot higher. Moving on to the interior, and we can see all of the components that I talked about earlier and how they interact with one another. There's one compute element, and it's mounted on a small PCB, which has 2 PCI X16 slots and an M.2 drive. One of those PCI slots is used for an optional discrete graphics card, while the other one is used for the element. On the Intel branded NUC, that GPU can be a dual slot and up to 8 inches long. Another interesting thing is that the daughter board has a custom 10-pin connector that brings auxiliary power to the element board, discrete graphics card, and the daughter board. Supposedly, there'll be adapters to port a standard ATX 24-pin connector into a compatible 10-pin. Other than making this NUC available as a bare-bones kit, Intel will be selling the element board or the element card and the daughter board to companies who are willing to create an ultra-compact small form factor system. We've already looked at the Razer Tomahawk, which seemed pretty interesting, and Cooler Master also has something called the NC100 hidden away in their suite. Even iBuy Power is getting into the game with the Revolt GT3. Let's look at that Cooler Master case for a second, since it represents a different strategy for the NUC ecosystem. Intel might end up selling the element cards directly through retailers, while other companies would sell cases with the daughter card and a power supply pre-installed. Supposedly, the NC100 with those components would cost around $200, and you'd be responsible for buying everything else. That would give people a lot more flexibility to outfit their systems with different components. But there's a bunch of problems there as well, and let's kick things off with that daughter board. You see, this thing looks like its designer didn't talk to the dude engineering the element's cooling solution, or neither realized what kind of spacing was needed for discrete graphics cards. Because you know, airflow is a thing, and right now every element system we've seen has the GPU choking out the CPU like it owes it money. Intel? Check. Cooler Master? Certainly. And the Razer Tomahawk? It's clearly evident, guys. Another problem is size. I'll give Intel some credit here for the NUC 9's super small footprint. At just 5 liters, it's tiny, but moving on to systems we saw from Cooler Master and Razer, and guess what? In order to make room for larger GPUs, they're right back to using a chassis that's in the 7 to 10 liter range. And honestly, there are some kick-ass SFF ITX cases in that size. So other than the simple modular approach to the compute element, there's really nothing here that you can't already do with much less expensive components. So who is this thing actually for? Well, it's certainly not for everyone watching this video, and if you look at the DIY gaming community, it almost feels like Intel's trying to physically limit your upgrade path to a modularized system around a very expensive element card. Not only that, but you're buying into an ecosystem that is using a very old mobile 9th Gen CPU that doesn't even support PCI Express Gen 4. What about productivity? While the combination of Intel's QuickSync and a discrete graphics card is awesome in some programs, the lack of PCI Gen 4 SSD compatibility and no USB 3.2 2x2 could make it a hard sell because it's 2020, guys. But I do think that the NUC 9 or whatever Intel's partners call it might end up being appealing for some companies who are looking for a compact, efficient workstation PC that can be a simple drop-in upgrade sometime down the line. You see, IT centers could love this because they just have to simply upgrade a module instead of buying an entire system. Gaming cafes could also see this becoming a great option because it's a very efficient way to cut down electricity costs. Most of all, when I look at the compute element, I worry about what Intel has planned for the PC market as a whole. Modularity is certainly interesting, but with the motherboard, CPU, and soon the GPU all in Intel's control, it could lead to a very closed ecosystem, and that's really concerning, guys, because it'll drive costs up. It's all just a poor value in my opinion, because if you think about it, when you add things like memory, storage, and the operating system, imagine what you could actually build for that price. I've even heard some people say that this might be the future of small form factor PCs, but I really hope that isn't true. I can see the NUC element eventually being an interesting option for businesses, but right now, it might be a very hard sell for many gamers. I'd love to be proven wrong, but we'll just have to wait and see when this thing eventually launches in March. But until then, I'll talk to you guys in the next one.